Hello again. My name is Ken Rethmeier, and it is my pleasure to be the host of these podcasts. They're both in video and audio, so you don't just have to listen, you can watch and see what's on the PowerPoints as I'm doing my narrative uh, presentations. And today we're going to be looking at organizational performance in the perspective of how do you measure it. And I think most of the time, most of the companies I dealt with when I was consulting had one or two really key performance measures, depending upon the industry. Banking, some pretty simple, straightforward, not I don't mean that as a pejorative. And the oil company, again, some very clear perspectives. And what we're going to try to do is introduce you to the model that David Kaplan and David Norton and Robert Kaplan created some years ago in the Harvard Business Review. And it's a very interesting piece. It's a balanced scorecard. And it's a very important way to make sure that you're looking at your organization from multiple perspectives. And again, I'm going to reread the quote up above. The genius of leadership function is articulating a vision of the future that is at once simple, easily understood, clearly desirable, and energizing. I guarantee you, when it works, it does wonders for an organization. I'm familiar with a hospital, small hospital. I used to sit on the board in the Atrium Baptist Health System. And that Davie Medical Center was ranked number 7 in the nation amongst the small community hospitals in a Fortune magazine survey. Unbelievable. And it's a credit to the leadership, both clinical and administrative leadership, because they were the ones who really set the tone. And when that happens at the top of an organization, it permeates very quickly. They'll understand what your expectations are. And then when they get in alignment with your thinking, it's amazing what you can accomplish. It really is. So I'm going to share the screen now, and we'll get started. There you go. Episode 20. It's part of the systems component of the book that I published, Leading for Value. And today it's going to be the methods of capturing and applying the balanced scorecard approach. And we'll walk through it in a stepwise process so that you'll see how I would recommend that you set it up in your own organization. And the 4 dimensions that this particular dashboard will have is customer target audience, financial success, internal business processes, and learning and growth. Now, you don't have to use those. You can use your own for the organization that you're leading that better fits that organization. But for this purpose, we're going to use this because it focuses on the customer and the financial aspects. And then in this case as well, the organization is very concerned and interested in seeing what is happening on a positive or an area where it needs some improvement in processes. And learning and growth is something that a lot of organizations don't spend much time on. And when you're in a turbulent environment or an environment where there's a lot of advancing progress in some of the technology, for example, artificial intelligence is now permeating the systems of organizations. And in particular, one area in Germany's back up. Dr. Tobias Gantner is using artificial intelligence in his own way to bring healthcare to those people living in the rural parts of the country where they don't have ready access to a physician. And what he's done is he has created a network using the pharmacy as the baseline or the anchor point of the system. And then the physicians and the patients are connected much like an iPad or a tablet device. And it's amazing what he's doing and how he's progressing in that country. So in that case, learning and growth would be an advantage for him to measure, because that would be the one area that would show him, am I moving this system forward in a very systemic way that's going to make meaningful changes to how we see healthcare in Germany. So those are what are better known as KPIs, key performance indicators, and we'll walk through some methods by which you can do that. And those are aligned with those 4 areas. You track them, and then at the end of the day, so to speak, you look back and see how are we doing. And again, another quote, J.D. Rockefeller, the secret to success is to do common things uncommonly well. And that couldn't be said any better. All you have to do is keep things fairly simple. One of the areas where I think I found some challenges when I was consulting is organizations, unfortunately, if you'll pardon the pun, tend to get down in the weeds too much. And they need to look at that more the 10,000-foot level. So in this case, we're going to see if we can't help you navigate in your own mind and how you might use this tool to your advantage in your own organization. And this is what it looks like. Taking those 4 areas and putting them on a chart and shows they're interconnected and they should have positive correlations as things go along. And in the case here, we're going to use the primary target of healthcare reform, vision, and strategy. So if we start at the top, customer target audience, goals, objectives, and desired measurable outcomes. And I'm going to use the example in cancer and in Romania, Merck Sharp Dome, the drug company, is leading a national effort to try to get a better system in place for early detection and treatment. And, heart cancer, stroke typically are worldwide leaders in premature deaths in most countries. And so that particular drug company is working with a lot of other companies and organizations to measure how are we doing on early detection and treatment of the patients, the customers we're targeting. And the financial success is important because that focuses attention to the viability of an organization. And I'm going to go back to Romania. They only spend 4.9% of their GDP for all of their healthcare. In the United States, we're up over 21% now. And so therefore, in their case, they have to use those scarce resources very effectively. And that's what one of these tools can do. You can do the same thing in your own organization, and that might be the banking industry at the branch level. It could be at the financial investment property level, or it could be in real estate. There's any number of things you can do to help you understand your organization and the business you're in the environment you're in. And internal business processes, that's an interesting one. It's trying to find the efficiencies and quality of performance improvement. And what do we do every day to get from point A to point B to C, D, and F? And how can we improve those processes to make it more effective? And again, this could be industry specific. I know a gentleman who's in a company now that they go to a hospital and they will sit down with their billing department and they look at their internal processes of how they code and how they bill the insurance companies. And what they can do is recover huge amounts of lost payments just by taking a look at the volume of patients under insurance in certain companies. And they show how to find the hot spots, if you will, in their billing department. They've been very, very successful. And then the 4th area, learning and growth. And it says sustained agility to change and adapt to new environments. Here again, just like we saw, which was a rather extreme change during the pandemic, a lot of organizations, retail shopping, other types of businesses had to modify very, very quickly how they do business. Because if they were continuing to do it in the old way, they would have dropped out and failed. And we saw a lot of that, unfortunately, in many areas. So this is just one example but I think it has a good sense of how you take it to your company and your organization and play with this and come up with your own perspective on it. So in this case, we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to walk through these examples. Said customer target audience. And here again, healthcare targeting cancer or other critical disease entities. In some cases, you might be surprised. So if you were a hospital and you had access to a database of information, statistical information, you could find out in your area what's the predominant problem. I can tell you in one area of North Carolina, for example, a rural area that was connected to a major teaching facility some miles away, they were experiencing unplanned readmissions to their hospital for the same DRG, diagnostic related group, within 30 days of discharge. And that was becoming a major problem. And one of the towns in that area took it upon itself to work with the EMT system across that county and set it up so that the EMTs got the list of patients being discharged to their county. And then they would make it a point to go by and see them periodically over the course of the first few days to make sure that they were not ending up back at the hospital. And it worked very effectively. Now, financial success, again, proper coding for optimal insurance payments. At least you want to cover costs. And many, many years ago, when I was with the Hospital Association of Pennsylvania, we published a chart that showed how a graphic chart, bar chart, that if you put X and Y axes up, you draw a line horizontal, showing the typical normal average cost per patient per day. Reimbursements for Medicare and Medicaid were well below that line. So what people have to do in those situations for survival is cross-charge the other types of payers. And that can be a problem as well. So proper coding, and not blaming the billing departments, because every year, for example, Medicare changes their process of paying, and you have to make sure that you adjust your process in your institution to meet that. Now, internal business processes. When I was sitting on the board of this hospital, another individual and I were responsible for the board's role of reviewing credentialing and medical staff privileging efforts, processes. And our job was to make sure that it was being done in a proper way. The medical staff's responsibility was to find a very effective way to collect all the information they needed for new physicians coming in and wanting to practice medicine there, as well as updating those, for example, when their not license were renewed, when they had finished educational programs that they were responsible to take. That was one of those things that we worked on very hard. And that was very interesting, and it was great to watch a hospital do it effectively. And learning and growth. And this here again, I'm going to use a hospital example. And I'm going to use the example of joint replacement program. Many years ago, about 8 years ago, hospitals were still using joint replacement programs and methodologies. They call them clinical pathways that required a one-night stay for the patient just to make sure he or she was doing okay. Well, guess what? Over time, the technology changed and the ability to get a patient in and out. And I have a good example. I had a partial knee replacement. I went in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was on my way home by 11:30 that day with everything done in great shape. And I can tell you, they did a superb job. And I would tell you the truth, believe me. So let's go back and take a look again. Key performance indicator. And you think this quote, I think, is very good. As someone working on ways to improve organizational performance measures, I know how important it is to look for guidance and the best of what others have done. Those looking to improve their choice and use of performance indicators will find thought-provoking ideas and valuable examples of good practice. Very, very important. So now we're going to go through the stepwise process, and I'll give you my perspective of how you could do this. You don't have to follow it. I'm just giving you one example to do. You gather the group together, and what you're going to do first is get the group to come to consensus through a methodology of a productive dialogue, brainstorming maybe, and then some critical thinking to define a target problem or goal that you want to attack. And you then need to make sure that everybody is comfortable with picking something that is identifiable and is measurable so that you can produce results that will show how you're doing. And in step 2, you identify 1 or 2 indicators to monitor and each measure the way of those 4 areas. So you take the topic, just like in this case, it's healthcare reform, vision, and strategy. When I was working with that mechanical services in the oil industry, we might have put in that centerpiece oil refinery turnarounds. That's when they shut down part of the refinery. They bring in a group of talented people, sometimes 200. In some cases, I saw down in Aruba, Valero Oil, they had over 400 people coming in from all over the world. And what they had to do was take a look at how do they improve their processes of doing mechanical services updating and repairing for the refinery in that particular case. So it would be very important to find indicators that are clearly connected with performance. Then step 3 is defining what is your goal for each of those indicators. How are we going to measure it? What's the time frame? So forth and so on. And then when you get to the point of step 4, you're now able to identify the targeted indicators appropriate for testing and validity. And you want to make sure that's very important. And again, a productive dialogue where someone throws an idea out and then you try to identify what's the connectivity, how does it work, how can we help the organization do it better. So then you draw up a scoreboard using the indicators just approved. And I would put it like it is shown on that diagram. And then you begin the implementation phase and collecting evidence, collecting data, if you will, to measure how well you're doing. And then again, depending upon the indicator, you would want to schedule meetings periodically to see how are we doing on collecting that data. Is it still looking pretty valid and reliable? And as a consequence, that way you can begin saying, yep, we got the right one, or we may have to make adjustments. And sometimes that happens too. And all organizations, I remember the mechanical services company, they had very, very discrete, very significant indicators they used when they were doing maintenance services for a refinery vis-a-vis a turnaround where they shut part of it down. And in the healthcare industry, the QI department, quality improvement department, every service, literally every diagnostic related group, DRG, has its own indicators to measure how you're doing. So if you're doing surgery, like a total replacement of a hip or a joint, or if you were doing other kinds of things, those indicators are very important, and you want to make sure that as you're collecting them, you're seeing the improvement that has a positive impact. And then obviously at the end of the time, if you have a time frame, step back and say, we've done a great job on this. Let's pick up another one. Let's look at another area. Let's celebrate and then get with it. Because after you've done this a couple of times, then it becomes part of your routine. And if you have a great CEO, a leader in the organization that understands and promotes this kind of behavior, you'll be surprised how effective you are as an organization. So the Balanced Scorecard is about systems thinking, looking at your organization from various system views, picking out those indicators, and trying to link them to what your vision, your strategic plans, and your operational level. So you have 3 units of analysis there. The vision, the broad vision. What do we want to be, or what wants to be? The strategic plan, A, B, C, and D, that you want to check off as successful. And then link it to the operational level. That's the inside indicators. And here it is. The challenge for leaders is to select KPIs that are high bar and stretch goals. The higher the bar, the bigger the stretch, the more energetic your team will be. Once you get them going, they'll work on their own. And they require data and analysis and, another productive dialogue to say, how do we deal with this data? And how can we transfer it to some other areas of our business? Final piece is offer leaders an opportunity to look beyond their own comfort zone. And I can tell you, having seen that in banking, when I was working with the old Wachovia, their comfort zones were pretty tight. And we were trying to introduce some new ways of doing things. And we did that through the branch network when we had 65 bankers in a room. And in 3 minutes, they came up with 450 ideas of various systematic things they could be doing differently. And 2 of them they implemented without any cost, and it put $5 million on the bottom line the very first quarter. So it paid off. We saw the same thing with the company that I work with in the oil industry. We selected key indicators. We monitored those during a turnaround because they said, look, Rethmeier, you were the consultant and you got us to change the way we do business. You better get some steel-holed boots because you're going to join us at Marathon Oil up in Ohio. And I did. I had a great time. And it was wonderful to watch how it worked. And what it did is it reaffirmed in that team's minds, the leadership as well as the workers, that if you do it the right way, you can't go wrong. You're always going to win. And then the last one is always ask, what can we do better? That's a very important piece. You don't want to become too complacent. Okay. Again, I want to thank you for your time and attention. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and tell you that the next time we're going to pick a different topic, slightly different, still linked to the system, ways of looking at things in organizations, and we'll be back pretty soon. I promise that. Please join me. Go to the URL down in the right-hand corner of the picture, and please leave me some comments. Leave me your assessments. I'd love to see it. I want to do this the right way, and that's the way I find out from you all. So again, thank you very much, and I'll salute you. Bye now.